Past, present, future. Abstractions of time, segments of life, the burden of living knowing we die. Like a child's hand dipped in old traumas, the past sticks to our skin and does not let go. We cling to what we know, our tales of time, memories woven together, the patchwork of time. A mistake was made when we labeled today. Today is not the present. It's mostly past and future. The present is fireworks bursting here and there, moments we lose in thought when we look away. The future is always ahead, but never in reach. It sits in front of our thoughts, untouchable, like a mirage in the middle of the desert, of the best and worst case scenarios. Abstractions of life, segments of time, the burden of living knowing we die. Welcome to the Memento Mori Lab podcast. I'm Myra, your host and aspiring creative friend. A recurring theme on this podcast is time, in its many forms, ticking clocks, memories, regrets, anxieties, and fears. So why not talk about it in the idea of past, present, and future? I find these concepts fascinating, and judging by all that's been written on the subject in philosophy, physics, literature, astronomy, and so on, I think I'm not alone. We all talk about these ideas of time. A common saying is that the past is dead and the future unborn, so all we can worry about is the present. Maybe so, but still, we tend to live in the past or the future as much as we live in the present, isn't it? Sometimes more. In part, it might be because the present is just too short, too quick for us to think about it at all. As soon as we recognize the present, it's gone. What I mean is that when we manage to interpret the present, it's no longer present, it's already past. And a quote-unquote new present has begun. The present disappears before our eyes, before we can say its name, while the past and the future might feel eternal in a way. Both our past and our future don't really exist, and at the same time they can live forever in our minds. Perhaps that's why some of our trauma from the past still feels present, feels fresh, because the past doesn't really assimilate the passage of time like we hope it would, like we want it to. The past and the future are, in a way, concepts created by our minds to comprehend the world and time passing. So the past doesn't need to stand on the grounds of physics, right? I mean, things that happened years ago suddenly feel like yesterday. In comparison, others that happened hours ago feel like ages, not to mention all the ones that are forgotten. As Einstein would say, it's all relative. I don't know if he would say that. I barely passed my physics exam in high school 1,000 years ago, but come on, the idea is there. He could have said it. We get so wrapped up in our past and our future that it becomes nearly impossible to see the present for what it is. One fleeting moment after the next. And these are the most important moments. These moments are what imprint our past and shape our future. As someone constantly obsessing about past decisions and future despairs, I felt like I had to talk about it in an episode. At least if you also struggle with these feelings, you'll know that you are not alone. I think that's becoming like the thing about this podcast. Like, I'm just sharing these things so that we can all find each other in a way, because sometimes there are no solutions to these struggles, but at least knowing that other people are right there with you really helps. The more I think about the past and all these moments gone and sometimes forgotten, the more I see that none of it is real. I know, I sound insane. I don't mean that none of it happened and this is some sort of simulation, though it might be, but I mean that what we have in our minds imprinted as our past, as our quote-unquote past, is nothing but stories. We talked about memories a few episodes ago, and the past in general is like our memories, nothing but stories we tell ourselves. The ones we hold closer, involuntarily or not, seem to be a nearby past, like traumas. At the same time, the less important ones seem adrift in a distant past. We cannot change the past, but looking at them in a different light might be helpful. Or maybe we can change the past, like a boat sailing in the water. The present forward motion moves the water behind it. So if we think about what good is the present if it's so short, maybe this is it. Perhaps whatever we decide to do with our present actually feels like changing the past a little bit. The events that happened when they happened won't change, but that is not the actual past. The past is what we look back at, what we see from here. And most of what we see from here is far from what actually happened. So I'm still thinking about the boat. Full disclosure, I do not sail, nor do I know any nautical terms, and I'm not going to research them right now, so bear with me. I've seen people sailing, piloting boats. They usually change the direction in the back of the boat with the little handle thingy. Closer to the past than the future, I'd say. The present, as short as it is, as fleeting as it is, can shake the past and shift the future. And maybe, like a huge ship, the response to a change isn't immediate. Otherwise, the Titanic wouldn't have crashed. It takes a while for the future to become the present we want it to be. Sometimes we try to change something in our lives and we make a shift and we reverse back to old habits. But maybe we didn't try it for long enough. Our minds got the best of us, as they usually do. Because they kept saying, this is not working, so we stop before we could actually see anything working, We paint images of our future in our minds, creating the worst impossible outcomes or hoping for the best, almost impossible solutions. Both sides of the imaginative coin called the future. Often none of it happens, and a plot twist comes along and flips the narrative on its head. Like when we are watching a movie, but we aren't really watching what happens. We are just wondering what's next, what then, and then? How are they getting out of this one? Now what? We are never all the way present, are we? With that in mind, I wrote a poem called Frames. Frames. Tomorrow I'll go back to reality. What if tomorrow never happens? I'm always waiting for the future, but it keeps fading into the present. My awful plot predictions land nowhere. Like negatives from an old movie, I play each scene in frames. 1 frame at a time, 24 per second. What if that's all the present really is? 1 frame. I skim through them on a search for nexts. And I miss the ones on the screen. Suddenly, I'm lost in my own narrative, still wondering what's next. How can I fit all my existence in 1 tiny frame? my wants and dreams, my fears and dreads. The frames go by fast, dissolving reality, moving still images right before my eyes. The projector never stops rolling the reel, oblivious to my absence until the movie is over. This got me thinking about one of my favorite movies, Cinema Paradiso. I don't know if that's how you'd say in English, but it's an old Italian movie and it's a beautiful story about a filmmaker and how he fell in love with the movies. I don't want to spoil it, so I will not talk about it, but I highly recommend it. All I will say is that one of the movie characters is the cinema projectionist. So he loads the movies onto the projector and makes sure everyone can watch it. This made me think that it's interesting how, while everyone watches a movie wondering what's next, the cinema projectionist knows what's next. He sees the frames before anyone else. If only we had that kind of control over our lives. But we don't, and it's not for the lack of trying, that's for sure. I think it's hard for us to truly assimilate that the present is so small, and yet it's all there is, one frame. But we are always in that one frame. We try to live in the past or the future, but we are always in the frame of the present. And like the poem at the beginning of the episode, today is not the present. Today is too long to be the present. The present is just now. Right now. And now. Maybe as mortal creatures, we want more. We want the past and the future too. Only the present is not enough. We want the future to be certain as the past, but better. We want the past to change like the future, but better. And still, the present is all there is. It's like drawing. You gotta make one line at a time. Usually, if we make a line thinking about the next one, we fuck it up and we have to start again. Though it's easier when we know where we want to go, like if we have a sketch or if we are making a square and we already made 3 of those lines. The last line will be easier to make, right? Watching the process unfold, like a drawing process, one present moment after the next, is beautiful. Life doesn't make it that easy for us. We don't have many sketches and there are a lot of lines missing. So we keep imagining future lines, hoping to make them easier. It rarely works. Freehanding is scary, but maybe it's scarier not to draw at all. Leaving a blank page with invisible, imagined lines, or nothing but crumpled paper from the past. That's gotta be worse. If you are wondering what's the point of this episode, well, so am I. I know we aren't going to change how our minds work. Not overnight anyway, and possibly not ever. We will continue to overthink futures and pasts and forget that the present is all we have. But maybe next time you sit down to do something like drawing, writing, painting, whatever it is, maybe try to be in the present. Not in the past nor in the future. Just sit there in the present. Draw one line after the other. Don't worry about all the future lines just yet. Don't worry about the next word. The next word will come right after this one. They always come. And coming back to the first poem, maybe the point of this episode is to get us to watch a couple of fireworks a day. For us to see the bursts of the present. At least one a day. That could make all the difference. That might make us feel more alive. And we might want a few more bursts of fireworks, not only on New Year's, without the interruptions of the past or the future. Maybe that's my New Year's resolution. more fireworks of the present. What is yours? Though I don't really think New Year's resolution tend to work, but just for the hell of it, what is your New Year resolution? DM me on Instagram at memento.mori.lab and let's talk about it. I wish you a happy new year if you celebrate it, and I hope you enjoyed this episode, even if it made very little sense. And a quick note, there will be new episodes every 2 weeks now instead of every week. I think that will make things a bit more consistent. So every 2 weeks, hopefully, if it all works out. And don't forget to share this episode with your creative friends. It really does help a lot. Thanks for hanging around till the end. See ya!